All right, we're going to head over to the Cloud Studio where we're going to be joining Steve Bakken from Bismarck, North Dakota, the heart of the Bakken oil field. Actually, it's not the heart of the Bakken oil field, the capital of the Bakken oil field, the former mayor of the capital of the oil field with the same last name, Steve Bakken. How you doing today, sir?
Good, my friend.
Stumbled on that intro a little bit. It didn't go, it went better in my head that it came out in reality, which is,
Well,
boy,
as broadcasters, we kind of have to deal with that every now and then.
that is, boy, Salty Dog. That used to be my nickname back when GeoCities and the internet first came out. Yeah, that was a website I had, Salty Dog.
I got
Uh,
this when I was visiting my sister in Alaska one time. So,
yeah, it's a good drink. It's grapefruit juice with vodka and salt around the rim. Is
oh, you know what? I
where
have not
that
had the
comes
drink,
from.
but I have visited the bar.
I imagine they serve a splendid one at that. Today, we're going to talk about energy. We're going to talk about some new ideas with some old technology that's happening. And Steve, I think that might be one of the better ways to introduce this because one of the ways I try to explain what's happening with our landfills is there are some smart, clever capitalists out there who are figuring out new, innovative ways to trap the gas, the methane gas that's released from landfills, which is rarely talked about in the public media. We'll talk about orphan wells all day long, but we won't talk about a landfill which can power a city in some cases. And in Fargo, Mike Williams, who was a city commissioner for a long time, who rode on the platform basically of that methane capture gas plant they have out there, out in the industrial landfill area out there. So just kind of wanted to preface it a little bit there with some context. So explain what it is your company does, what it is you're doing, and how it connects with what I just said.
Well, so you're right. That technology has been around for a long time, and that's old technology, but it's also an old methodology. So, is there value in reclaiming the methane off of a landfill? Yep, there is. You can produce energy off of that, and you're left with what? You're still left with the garbage, the MSW. So the next iteration of that was how you get rid of that. So somebody came up with incinerating garbage, no different than anybody having a burn barrel in your backyard. If you're out in the country, you burned your own garbage, got rid of your own waste. Very dirty, very non-efficient. So what IEC has done is taken technology out of the University of Iowa with a gasifier system. And what we do is get rid of the MSW. So we get rid of the garbage. People need to stop thinking of garbage and recycling because recycling is kind of a Ponzi scheme. There's a legitimate component, and then it makes everybody feel good. Legitimate recycling is not all the stuff you throw in
Recycling,
there.
no, recycling by definition is very noble and useful and
Sounds
part
good.
of the
Sounds
whole
great.
system. However, in practice, the way that we're currently doing it, it's everything goes into the same trash bin at the end of the day. So it's not efficient and it's not very good. And
Well,
more people are waking up to that. I think I really do that there. But I just wanted to pause for a second here because the name of your company, which I did not introduce and reference, so there's issue number one for me as a professional journalist and interviewer. I red flag number one there. Uh, IEC, not ICE, not ICE. It's IEC, correct?
well, we're going to raid garbage. We're going to raid landfills. So yeah, I suppose you could. It's IEC, Independent Energy Company, which
Never
is
put that
technology
together.
based out of the University of Iowa, and they've been running this program for over 20 years, vetting everything out, and we have the licensure to go out and commercialize this because they've taken what they can do far enough, or as far as they can. Now it's time to applicate it practically and see what it looks like. So when you're looking at getting rid of a landfill, because that's what we do, we have the ability to mitigate waste coming in after we take out the recyclables. Now, the legitimate recyclables are get glass and metals. Those come out and those are legitimately recyclable. The cardboard, the plastic, everything else that people think is recyclable is your milk carton. It's those aren't. They have a half-life. You can recycle a plastic depending on what the plastic is, maybe once. Cardboard, maybe once. It turns to mush after that. So not legitimate recyclables. But what people need to start thinking of those as, and what municipalities need to start thinking of those as, are BTUs. Don't think of them as a recyclable, it's energy, it's BTU. So you pull the legitimate recyclables out, and then basically the old technology that's around, I like to equate it to a little bit to what we see as an oil play today. Horizontal drilling had been around for a long time. Fracking had been around for a long time. When they were put together, magic happened. And that's a little bit of what this is, because gasifiers have been around for a long time. And um, producing RDF, which is the fuel for a gasifier, has been around for a long time. But when it was married together at the University of Iowa and post some of that, we came up with a better fuel source and a better way to produce electricity in a clean fashion, because garbage burners have also been around for a long time, hence the burn barrel in your backyard, but it's dirty, it's messy, it's toxic, not very clean, not good for the environment. And that's why you see commercial garbage burners, which do exist today, have an incredible amount of EPA regulations attached to them and have scrubbers on their stacks, and it's still a dirty process. What this ingenuity through the University of Iowa has come up with is a way to mitigate that, because we produce its own char bed, which is pure carbon. So a carbon bed, the best filter in the world is charcoal for pure carbon, for water, air, any of it. And it basically filters itself. So we wind up with a process that doesn't have the EPA entanglements, that doesn't have the exorbitant cost of putting on those scrubbers. It's just a clean process. It's kind of the future. I mean, I like to say a lot that the three absolutes in life are death, taxes, and garbage, and that it's pretty solid. It's we're not making less of it.
So because I basically I grew up in Fargo and got a portion of my professional career in Fargo. I'm pretty familiar with the um, technology, the basic technology. Let's put it that way, and also some of the government regulations. Like I mentioned Mike Williams earlier. He was the one that spearheaded the trash burning methane capture project in Fargo, which, from my knowledge, is still is
Yeah, they're
still
still
working.
capturing gas.
Yeah, they're still working on it. It's still working just fine. And so flash forward 20 years in my head. Insert Moore's law, which means the processor doubles in speed every 2 years and reduces in size double every 2 years. And so now you got the University of Iowa. Is it Iowa University or University of Iowa
Yep,
State? I'm
University
sorry.
of Iowa.
So you have their technology now with the modern, like I've been saying for a long time, quit demonizing coal, reinvent coal, because once it's activated, it could solve our water problem, our freshwater problem. It could solve our cleaning of carbon filter problem. There's so many uses for coal. It's here for a reason. All energy has a purpose. Okay. And so when I think about this, and then I put my Jetsons hat on, Steve. Let's put my Jetsons hat on here, because what you're talking about is a technology that literally can be a trash compactor. That a home could, at the end of the day, in the same way the supercomputer became a laptop, one day that could happen. Now, will it? Probably not. But you might have maybe that concept replacing regional recycling centers, to where
Okay, so
now
where
you
you're
got these
going
little
with this,
microgrids. Go ahead with the microgrid
where
concept
you're
here.
going with this is fascinating, because you're spot on. It's not the Jetsons though. It's Back to the Future. It's the flux capacitor down the road.
Oh, oh.
Granted, it's 50 years later and when
You
scalability
see,
changes, but
now my mother would not let me watch that movie because it was an old man meeting a boy in a parking lot after midnight, wanting a ride in his car. So just the whole premise of that movie, I couldn't see. Sorry.
hey, there was a
And oh,
van. The
and the
terrorists had a
Libyans.
van.
I, I still call the VW bus the Libyan van, and like half the people understand what I'm talking about. I'm like, hey, it's a Libyan van.
Yeah, but think of it in those terms, though, and that's probably down the road a future iteration of where this is. But right now, we're actually scalable. So the gasifier technology was married to the RDF technology, which already existed, and that's where we do the fuel sourcing. So now you're looking, and basically, when you're thinking of the RDF that you're creating, which actually there's a huge market for over in Europe because after they killed the coal industry over there and people started deforesting Germany and France so they didn't freeze to death by cutting down all the trees for heat, they kind of went, huh. Well, RDF is really taking the place of as a fuel source. So think of it as in terms of a pellet stove. I wouldn't grill a steak off of these pellets, but it's fuel. It's BTUs. And the fuel source goes in, runs through the gasifier, syngas is produced. You take that syngas, hook it up to a boiler system, generator system, and now you're producing electricity off of a landfill.
So what's
That's what this
RDF?
is.
What's RDF again?
So that's the pellets that are produced after it's dewatered,
Sure.
neutralized for the nasty stuff, and then compacted into a pellet form that you just run into the the gasifier.
So are we talking about like a shipping container size unit, or how big
Yeah,
of a unit are we
no.
talking about here?
So we're scalable, and an E-pod can consume 30 tons per day. Depending on what your needs are, those are scalable and you just run them in series. So if you need to get rid of 300 tons a day, you just add on the E-pods. They're detachable. So, which is interesting because that makes us mobile. We're basically skid mounted and we're mobile. So we can go into a an area where there's a landfill. So we've got a
Construction
situation here.
site,
You walk out of
whatever.
well, you walk out of a high school here in Bismarck, and it's an old landfill out the back door, and they have to redo the parking lot all the time because it's uneven ground.
Yeah.
Where I first got involved with this was land reclamation. So the
Milk
ability to
carton
go in
settle.
and mine out a landfill and reclamate that land for future use. Because the one thing I noticed in all of my research, and we were running into that here in Bismarck when I was mayor, is, communities overgrow their landfills because you can only put them out so far. Rule of thumb's about 7 miles logistically, because that's all the infrastructure and the cost of running trucks back and forth. That's all the system will allow. And what happens 60 years later? The community's probably overgrown the landfill. So the ability to go back in and mine out those landfills, produce energy from them, and reclaim that land has an incredible value. I'm working on some projects right now over in India, and they actually sell land by the square inch, not the square foot. That's how valuable land is in some of those communities. Florida, for example, is another place we've got contracts in place down there. Um, their issue is the water table. You can't bury something. So you don't have traditional landfills. So you're stuck with either shipping it someplace else. And the dirty secret is a lot of municipalities ship past the 12-mile limit and dump stuff in the ocean. And that's a big problem over in Southeast Asia. Not to say it doesn't happen here in this country either. Um, or you put it in, ship it off somewhere else and let it be somebody else's problem. And there's a great cost in doing that. So this is an interesting little tidbit. The three highest points of elevation in Florida, do you know what they are? Piles of
Oh boy, I
garbage.
do not.
They're piles of garbage,
That
Jason.
would make sense. Yeah,
That's the highest elevation
landfill
in the entire
mountains. Yep.
state.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have
And
heard that
one
before.
company has
Yes.
just
Yes.
put a permit in to raise the tallest one. I forget what they call it. It's Mount something or other. Um, is what the locals call it, but they just put a permit in to raise it another 120 feet.
Hmm.
So it's an issue that's not going away. So while the methane and the gas projects, the traditional gas projects for garbage haven't had a place, you're still left with the refuse. And it's not going away. And we need to clean that up. And if we can do it in a way that produces energy and we have benefit out of it and a cost-effective way to produce energy, and it's clean energy because the entire process is carbon negative, then that's the next generation.
You can really see in my mind where the next step for community integration would be the recycling center neighborhood areas where most of the individuals now um, are conditioned to go to a kind of like, it used to be like a high school or an elementary school is where you'd bring your recyclables, but now they actually have, certain areas where it's just recyclables. It's not based on the school system
Right.
anymore. So I could see where something like that would be dropped in, every 4 or 5 city blocks, and then your method would power that to where they would just take their recyclables and go to your store, your shipping container energy producer recyclable. And anyway, go ahead.
Well, so basically, you're spot on, because I came up with this in the process a while ago on when we started looking at how to implement the technology. And that's one of the directions that I went was it's like if you take a highly dense urban area, and part of this is the lack of stability with the grid and where we're going with data centers, and we'll get to that in a second. But um, if you have the ability to mitigate the waste locally and generate power locally with a microgrid, that's a huge win. And it's a win for the grid because you're able to take different areas off. And we can do that. So if you're in a very dense residential area in New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles, and you're able to take that municipal waste out of that area. Now you're not running trucks long distances across roadways, and the number one thing that destroys a residential road is a garbage truck because those roads aren't built for those weights because they're the heaviest thing on the planet. And you can produce electricity locally or augment locally to what the grid is not supplying. Great example, take a look at brownouts and blackouts across the country because, hey, everybody's running their air conditioning and we don't have the power for it. Okay, well, we can augment that or we can just take it off the grid. We can take sections off the grid.
Hmm.
The other piece is you take a look at Las Vegas and you've got a couple casinos. Look at the massive amount of power they consume and the massive amount of MSW or garbage they produce. You can take it local, do the same thing there. So the ability to take pieces off the grid, the ability to mitigate waste, the ability to produce local electricity, and the ability to mitigate logistics, because a lot of things come down to when you start talking costs and doing cost analysis, it's the logistics of things. And we can mitigate that as well. The AI centers, which ironically, they, for the most part, want to be in front of the meter right now because it's a redundancy issue. And there's nowhere in statute, although a lot of our politicians like to talk about, oh, yep, consumers, ratepayers, we're gonna protect them first. They're gonna get there's nothing that says they get the electricity. And energy producers prefer commercial or industrial users. It's easier, it's simpler, and it pays better. Well, you're gonna wind up having to take, and Elon Musk tapped into this. Um, Group here in North Dakota that owns a power plant tapped into this. Eventually, you're going to have with the power consumption take data centers off the grid, or the grid's going to fail. So we have that capacity as well. If you've got a data center somewhere located near a densely populated or an urban area with landfills, we can mine out those landfills, reclaim the land, produce the power, and take a data center which uses an exorbitant amount of electricity off the grid. and off the backs of ratepayers. So
It's an
it's not
interesting
where things are
concept.
going to go. It's where things are going to have to go eventually. We're going to have to deal with garbage.
Well, and I could see where, and not everybody's going to understand this, but I know your background, Steve. So you learned agriculture by osmosis, like I did, just by where you grew up. And the towns were set up based on how many miles you could drive on your horse and buggy and back in one day. And so, what was it?
And the
Every
rail lines,
Yeah, what was it?
that's why there was
Every eight
elevator
miles, yeah, what was
12.
it? Go ahead.
Every 12
12.
miles, they figured you could haul your product to market max 6 miles back in the day.
Right. And so they wanted to make sure everybody, if they left at, 7 in the morning, they were home by dinner or whatever the case was. And so I could see that concept now being introduced in a reverse way, that say every 4 blocks, you just bring your garbage to this place now, to where that's the way it is. And you eliminate landfills in the next 30 years. You eventually phase them out because they're not going to be needed for 90% of the things. In the same way, the drone technology is supposed to reduce the use of water and pesticides by 80 to 90%. The humans could do that kind of in the reverse way that we set up the rail system. Just figure, okay, every 4 blocks, that should be good for somebody to go and take their own trash to a location and get back in time, so it doesn't dismiss their day. In New York, they're trained to go down to the basement and places they don't have incinerators or garbage chutes. So it does work in some areas. I'm just having a little spitball session here, Steve. I get excited about new ideas because that's where we're at right now. There's such a fight for who wants to control the grid and the system of humans, and the energy we use, and the digital marketing. I'm sorry, the money we use, and all kinds of stuff that my mind, give an inch, give a kid an inch, they'll take a mile, right? So that's where my mind is. What do you think about that, though, with the rail system, the way that was set up, and kind of using that as the new model for land waste?
Well, it could be very simply. Now, you're probably not going to put all the infrastructure in to produce the electricity every 4 blocks, but you can mitigate the waste in that fashion. And then it's just a question of collector lines for putting in central hubs for collecting the syngas, for running it through a boiler system, and the turbine set for producing electricity.
And by the
Um,
way, the reverse ripple on that too is now you have less garbage trucks on the road. And as you mentioned, that's the number one issue with road repair is these
so
garbage.
the
Go ahead.
typical residential neighborhood their roadway will last about 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 if you're lucky years. And then the municipality has to come in and rebuild the road with Cotton Mason on the road. Most of that damage to that road, because it's a residential road, was because of the garbage truck, or this, in our case, the snow removal equipment, heavy equipment that road wasn't designed for. So if a municipality would say, hey, with routine maintenance, our road now will last 20, 25 years. Look at that cost to the homeowner.
Right. So
Because
just
people get special assessed and they have to pay for that road to be repaired.
just take my example of, let's say every 4 blocks you have one of these microgrid in these University of Iowa IEC
The gasifier
microgrids.
system,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, whatever the word is, every four
Or,
blocks or whatever the
yeah,
case is. So what you've got now is you've got people that are
mm-hmm.
bringing their trash there, weekly or whenever they need it, and then they have some trash that's still going to need to go to landfill. That's still going to be the case no matter what. But what you've done is, instead of having weekly trash with these big giant construction equipment machines, maybe you're down to every 2 weeks, maybe you're down to monthly. And just that right there, that's when nickels make dollars, Steve. And you, as a former mayor, you understand that more than anything, that when you're looking at something over 20 years, what's the things that we can do that are nickels that add up, so that we can try to get as much out of this? Am I crazy, or is my mind in the right place?
No, and I always look at things in terms of where do we need to be, not where we are today. And unfortunately, people and governments tend to be a little bit knee jerk and deal with what we're dealing with today. It's like, where do we need to be 20, 25, 30 years down the road? And what are the pieces of technology? What are the pieces of good policy that we can put in place today that we can build upon so that we're going to be in the place we need to be later? And I always am very cognizant of that. It's not about what's going on today as much as where do we need to be. So you make good decisions today for tomorrow. And that's really what we should be doing as government. Not always the case right now, but that's kind of my has been my well, and you and I had this conversation a lot. The crux of my ire towards environmentalists that they want it all right now, and they forego good incremental solutions that are going to get you where you want to be eventually. Because everybody, I don't think there's a single person, and forget politics, that is not going to say, yep, I care about the environment. I care about the future for my kids and my grandkids and what the land looks like. But when you're making decisions knee jerk, it causes more problems than it does. A great example is you take a look at California and other blue states that implemented, hey, you got to have an electric car. Yep, we're not going to sell. Well, I think California was what 2030. Not going to sell combustion engines by 2030. You're going to have an electric car. And then about 2 years ago, when they figured out the grid can't support it, you can only charge that electric car every other day, depending on what your street address is. And now we've got the data centers, the AI data centers that are going to consume exorbitant amounts of energy, and the grid's not going to be able to handle it. The who gets left in the lurch? It's probably you and I as consumers and
This
ratepayers
is
on the
this is
residential
one of the
side.
this is and we'll have to get into this another day because this
We
is one
need
of the
better
big
solutions.
well, it's one of the biggest issues that's happening right now is that there's a structure being built where the AI data centers are going to monitor our power and our carbon use, and they're the biggest perpetrators of it. So
Oh yeah,
they're using up like 80% of it, and they're giving us the scraps, and then nitpicking on how we spend our day and saying no,
it's like
you can
it's
only
like the
drive every
environmental
3 days. Go
it's
ahead.
like the environmentalists of the World Economic Forum and those powers that, oh, you got to decarbonize, you got to be green, you got to, and yet they're the ones that fly around in their private jets around the globe as the biggest consumers of carbon, trying to get their message out that stop using carbon. In North Dakota, and you saw it in Minnesota as well. Uh, look at the fires they had up in Canada. You know how much CO2 that produces in one event? It's like this last summer, and I've read some studies that those fires up in Canada produce more CO2 than what the industrialization of humans have in the last 150 years. Where are you coming up with solutions?
Not only that, but one
Yeah.
volcano burp, one
Oh, yeah.
burp from a volcano, that's like 3 generations of human use. I mean, so
And what
it's
emanates out
it's
of the
it's about
seabed,
the
you know?
narrative. But by the way, your California example was pretty good because California in the 90s, they they were on the right path to being progressive because they had a serious issue. You could drive down the 405 and not see, or I'm sorry, you could drive down Ventura Boulevard and not see the mountains. There was so much
Yeah.
smog. So they did put in some regulations that made sense. And then they tried to get people into a hybrid car. But that wasn't good enough. They said, no, it's got to be EV. And that's where they screwed up.
Yeah.
That's where they screwed up. They didn't compromise and they tried to force a solution that wasn't tenable. It wasn't tenable
Hybrid
technology
technology's been
wise.
around for a long time, and it's the best, most efficient model that there is. It's not
I
the
have
electric vehicle, it's the hybrid.
I have never I've probably interviewed 100 hybrid owners, and I've never talked to one who is not completely satisfied over the moon about their hybrid. Like I can't even think of a complaint off the top of my head, and that includes truck owner hybrids. Now EVs, I have not met one EV owner that has not returned it. And I'm being totally serious because the progression happens every time. They love it. They start complaining about how they have to start working for their car now because there's only certain places that you can charge, and then all of a sudden the reality of waiting 45 minutes, and then they try to justify it by, well, if I run errands, and then they start realizing, my God, this is a lot of work. And then within 2 years they return it, every single one I've interviewed. So there you go, folks. True statement from somebody who's interviewed over 30 car hybrid and EV car owners. But that's not why we're here today, Steve. We're here to talk about how you're burning trash and changing the world and everything else. So let's
be
reset.
Be very careful about that because people get in their head garbage burner, and a garbage burner is not efficient. It will never financially pencil out. It's filthy, it's dirty, and it's not. The gasifier process is different, and it is environmentally friendly, clean, produces energy through syngas.
I'm going to call you the gas man. I'm going to call you the gas man.
Well, I've been called that before, maybe on the air.
Much easier. In fact, there's even some Seinfeld references. I mean, we can't even make Seinfeld jokes because today's kids don't even watch Seinfeld. So I guess we could recycle them and claim them as our own. That would work.
Oh, yeah,
but at any rate, I'm looking at the time. I got to get running. You got a call coming up here in 9 minutes. I've got a deadline in an hour where I've got to get 22 radio stations a weekly show, which this is going to be on. Give yourself a little bit of a commercial. So if anybody's listening, that's a decision maker, or they want to know more information on how they can engage with you on moving forward, go ahead.
So if you want to learn more about the technology, just go to our website. It's iec.energy, iec.energy. You can get all the information there. You can reach out to us. We're in the process of doing a couple projects right now. We've got 4 more projects in the queue, and this is where things are going to have to go because, like I said, death, taxes, and garbage are the 3 absolutes in life.
He's the new age gas man, ladies and gentlemen. He's Steve Bakken. Give him a call and get your garbage needs taken care of. All right. I'm going to hit stop here, and we're going to go to a commercial break.